Guys, it's Nasim here. Now, ever since Apple has introduced the iPhone 14 lineup, many of us have been concerned as to whether or not we should get the iPhone 14 Pro Max or the iPhone 14 Plus. So in this video, I wanted to break down what each phone is good at based on various stages of use to give you guys an idea of which phone is actually better. Now, the iPhone 14 Plus and the iPhone 14 Pro Max are two phones that really have a lot in common and also many differences. Both have suitable softwares complemented with similar hardwares to their counterparts. Both have really good looking displays that offer a premium visual experience, and both have pretty high prices when compared to other phones in their respective categories. But looking at them from an individual standpoint, there are some things that each phone was better at. The iPhone 14 Pro Max has a slightly more advanced display, a more premium build, and many more features. And the iPhone 14 Plus has many valuable advantages. It has a very comparable display and build. It has a very comparable battery, and although its glass back might not be as durable, the most important factor is it's the same exact size but at a cheaper price. So even though both of these phones have had many things that were good, they both had their downsides when it came to many different things. And today we will be taking a look at what each phone has to offer so that it can help your decision on which one is actually worth it. So I will be comparing the iPhone 14 Plus and the iPhone 14 Pro Max based on 5 different categories, starting with display, software, battery, speakers, and last but not least, cameras. Now, the iPhone 14 Plus has a 6.7-inch display, and the iPhone 14 Pro Max has a 6.7-inch Super Retina XDR display that were very comparable to each other as far as visual experience. The only difference between them is that the iPhone 14 Pro Max has a 120Hz refresh rate, which basically means that whenever you're doing things like scrolling or moving through the software, it'll feel much more smoother, which really improves the quality. Now, when it comes to responsiveness, the iPhone 14 Pro Max did a better job than the 14 Plus because there were some times where my 14 Plus will respond a little slower every time I tried to scroll through the OS. So as far as display, the Pro Max is more responsive, but just like last year, both phones are prone to overheat, which can result in more lags. Now, when it comes to the size of both displays, but one thing that I will say is that the 14 Pro Max has the pill-shaped notch, which looks different aesthetically, and you can definitely tell the difference between the two. And speaking of notches, the 14 Plus has the exact same as the previous iPhones, but the iPhone 14 Pro Max has completely changed the game with its latest release of the dynamic island pill-shaped notch. I pretty much had the same opinion when it came to brightness. Both the 14 Plus and Pro Max had really bright screens that were very easy to see whenever the sun was shining, and both phones' auto brightness worked really well. Now, the final thing that I liked about both the 14 Pro Max and the 14 Plus's displays was the fact that both had really great resolutions, both phones had very vibrant and nice colors, both phones had sharp displays, and both phones gave me an overall great experience. So I would say that in terms of resolution when watching videos, it was pretty much tied. Now, when it came to software, I would say that both the 14 Plus and the 14 Pro Max performed very well. They both did whatever I needed them to do very efficiently, but again, the Pro Max responded much faster whenever I used it. The 14 Pro Max was able to handle the software smoother, the animations were slightly better. I still would get lags here and there, but it was much less often. But when it comes to the 14 Plus, there would be times where the OS was laggy whenever it got hot. Like I would normally be using my phone and it would start to lag a little. So in certain situations, I would get frustrated that it wasn't responding well enough. But when it comes to software running heavier apps though, I had less problems with the Pro Max than with the 14 Plus. The Pro Max ran really smooth and it felt much easier to control different games. But if I'm being honest, iOS 16 on the 14 Pro Max overall feels smoother because of the 120Hz refresh rate. But overall, both phones did a really good job at creating an immersive experience. Now, the battery on the 14 Plus and Pro Max were pretty much the same. The 14 Pro Max will be able to last me all day with 8 to 9 hours of on-screen time, and the 14 Plus will also give me 8 to 9 hours on a consistent basis. Now with the Pro Max, I went in my days with about 20%, which was really good. And with the regular 14 Plus, the battery will be around 15%, which was still really good. Also, I didn't really use power saving mode for this test. So the 14 Pro Max is slightly better, but honestly, it doesn't really make that much of a difference. Now when it came to charging speeds, both the 14 Plus and 14 Pro Max were pretty much the same. The fast charging did okay. I would usually charge them overnight, but whenever I charge them during the day, after 30 minutes, they usually be on 70 to 80%. So overall, I would say that the battery on both phones are really good. And if you're someone who's looking to get the 14 Plus or the 14 Pro Max, then the 14 Pro Max is slightly better, but again, you can't go wrong with either. Now, when it came to bass, I would say that the 14 Pro Max's speakers were slightly better. It made listening to songs a little bit more enjoyable. The 14 Pluses were still really good, especially when compared to other phones in the market, but it didn't hit as hard as the 14 Pro Max. The sound quality on both of them were really good. Music sounded nice, videos were loud and clear, and the speakers really enhanced my viewing experience because they were just that good. Now the cameras on the iPhone 14 Pro Max and 14 Plus were pretty much the same when it came to quality. The 14 Pro Max has a 48 megapixel main camera, backed by a 12 megapixel ultra wide and telephoto lens, and the 14 Plus has a 12 megapixel main backed by a 12 megapixel ultra wide, but I still want to show you guys how each of them did. Now heads up, one thing that I'm realizing is that people's views on cameras are sometimes subjective, because me and a few people were in disagreement of which camera is better. I sided with the 14 Pro Max and they sided with the 14 Plus, but I wanted to let you guys decide because both cameras are great and your opinion may differ from mine. Like right here, you can see my outside daytime photos, and I will say that these were really good pictures that turned out really well. The skies were very vibrant yet color accurate. The trees and other aspects of nature were very sharp. My face looked pretty color accurate, especially when compared to last year's version, and the overall vibrancy of the outside pictures were pretty great to no surprise. Now when we look at the inside daytime photos, I would say that these were also really great. Like right here, you can see that there was no graininess no matter how dark it got, and my selfies were top notch when compared to other flagships. The quality got much better, the sharpness was still great, and the colors were very accurate, which definitely redeemed the camera. And when it came to video quality, both phones were great within their respective categories, and to give you guys an example, here's some videos that I took on it. So here's the final question. Should you buy the iPhone 14 Plus or the iPhone 14 Pro Max? Well, in my honest opinion, I think that most people should side with the iPhone 14 Pro Max because not only is it a better overall phone, but it isn't that much more expensive than the 14 Plus, and you also get more features in the process. And there it is, you guys. My comparison video between the iPhone 14 Plus and the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Now, let me know down in the comments, would you guys get the iPhone 14 Plus or the Pro Max? Let me know. And if you guys made it to the end of this video, I would like to say thank you for sticking around. And don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It'll be very appreciated. And as far as social media, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.